about was in relation to digestion. So we're going to go into digestion today. My preface to this is that it is a very complex, big topic. There's a lot that we still don't understand about the gut and its function. We're learning a ton as we go. So just know I'm going to start with the basics, and then there's going to be stuff that you're like, well, what about this and what about that? We can, if you guys want to dive deeper into it, then we can. But I want to make sure, like with everything else, we have our foundations first, and then we can move into some more complex scenarios as we go along. So we're going to start with some basics. Okay, and I think we've got it. Good. Okay, so digestive health and gut restoration. Couple of fun facts. Did you know that if you spread your digestive system flat out, your entire digestive system would cover a tennis court? Gross. Roughly 70% of your immune system is actually in your gut. I've seen figures, you're going to see anywhere from 70% to 80%. What you need to know is that if you are consistently someone who gets sick, like you're the person who's like, I'm always just kind of getting stuff, one of the things you want to take a look at is your gut health. And there's like gut lining and there's irritation. I'm going to walk you through the steps. And then there's like gut microbiome. So they're connected because they're all in the gut, but they're slightly different in how you would approach fixing that. There are more bacteria in your gut than cells in our body, which is crazy to me. There's 3 pounds of bacteria in your gut with over 1,000 species, trillions of bacteria in the gut. There's 20 million bacteria genes versus 2,000 genes in humans as a whole. The gut contains more neurotransmitters than the brain, and this is where you're going to see a lot, especially on social media, where you see things, the gut brain connection. There is a connection there, and it's because there's so many transmitters from the gut going to the brain, and those transmitters into the brain tell your body, literally every system, what it should be doing. So, and it is very much still an emerging science. So we're just tapping the surface in terms of gut microbiome and that particular area. I'm going to walk you through kind of the basics of digestion today, and then we can get more into that on another call. So this is the fun part. Everybody likes to talk about poop, right? So what is a healthy digestion and why does it matter? What does healthy digestion look like? Well, number one, it would be the absence of pain, bloating, reflux, heartburn, diarrhea, loose stools. Those are not normal. Those are signs. Now, to have that once in a while, okay, cool. But if that's an ongoing thing, that is something that you should dig more into. Regular and pain-free bowels. You should be normally having a bowel movement every day. At the very least, every other day. And it should not be more than 3 times a day. So that's where that like kind of, and again, everybody's gonna be just a little bit different. Don't make it like absolute. There are certainly times where you may miss a bowel in a given day, especially if you're traveling or excess stress, that will do that to your bowel movements and your ability to digest. But on a regular basis, you want to make sure that you're going every single day. That's how you get rid of toxins from your system. And then we can take a look at the Bristol stool chart. And this gives you an idea of, what your poop should look like, right? So it goes everywhere from type 1, which is very constipated, where you're looking at small balls or pellets, all the way to type 6, which is very loose. And we really want it to be in that type 3 to 4, where it is healthy, optimal. It might be a little bit lumpy, but it's snake-like, it's smooth, it's pain-free. It shouldn't be a big deal to excrete it out, if you will. And you guys can always look up the Bristol stool chart if you need a refresher on what your poop should look like. All right, why does this matter? Number one, it's the most central, making sure there's no questions. It is the most central organ that other organs depend on for life-supporting nutrition. Your gut is where you break down food, the liquids, everything that you take into your body, into their chemical components. So you're talking about your carbohydrates, your fat, your proteins, so that your body can then absorb those nutrients, use them as energy wherever we need it most, as we talked about in the past. build, repair cells, and then it's also where it's going to rid metabolic waste. It's going to excrete all of those toxins back out. So if you think about that, if your gut isn't able to do that, number one, you're not getting the energy that your body needs, which means that now my system, my metabolic system is having to be discerning on where it can send energy. And then also, if you are not excreting that waste back out, you have toxins sitting in your waste, which is also very unhealthy. I see a chat question real quick. Yes. Question was, sorry, you guys can't see the question, so let me repeat it. When you say the gut, are you referring to the stomach and the small, large intestines, or just the stomach? We're referring to the stomach, small, and large intestines. Good question. All right, here are the less obvious functions. Number one, the digestive system is made up of muscles. So that's how your body excretes those things out. It actually has to contract to squeeze those out and move food down so that it can move it down the chain to actually get to the nutrients that it needs. Again, your immune system, most of the immune system does lie in the digestive system. So we're going to go back to here. There's the digestive system, and then there's the gut. So this was actually a really good question. Your digestive system actually starts and kicks in before food actually touches your lips. When you smell food and that saliva gets released, before you ever actually put food in your mouth, that is part of the digestive system. It starts in your brain. Your brain recognizes that odor and it will release the saliva to start the process of being able to break that food down as you put it in your mouth. So that's the digestive system. And then when we talk about the gut, we're talking about large, small intestine, stomach, all of that. From a neurological standpoint, the entire nervous system and vagus nerve connection, right? So again, there's a huge connection there between what happens in the gut and the transmitters that go into the brain. Endocrine just has to do with hormones, right? So that's what that means. There are more than 16 known hormones, such as ghrelin. And what I want to point out here, just so that you guys kind of take pause for a second, a lot of times you guys are going to see stuff on social media, or even like stuff that I talk about. I think that most women, when they think in terms of hormones, what they're thinking in terms of, and what you may be thinking of, is sex hormones, which is estrogen, progesterone, testosterone, which you typically, just so you guys know, before you hit perimenopause, before everything starts dropping back off, you actually have more testosterone than estrogen. Surprise. So that's where most people think in terms of hormones, but your body has a lot of hormones in it. Ghrelin is one of those. So your gut has your gut function, your gut health has an impact on that. From a cardiovascular standpoint, probiotic bacteria actually help normalize cholesterol. What this means and why it's important to you if you are in midlife is that as estrogen starts to drop off, that can greatly impact cholesterol. So it's very common to see women as they're going through this change to see their cholesterol levels start to rise. And then from a metabolic standpoint, it's not only digestion, but it also has an effect on your thyroid conversion as well. So it's why this is important and why we want to make sure, aside from the symptoms of being either, bloated or constipated or things like that, there's actual health reasons why we want to make sure that we have a healthy gut. No questions so far. Okay. Most common digestive complaints. The most I see definitely are bloating and reflux. Those are probably the two that I see the most complaints for. So you're talking about bloating, gas, diarrhea, constipation. It can swing from one to the other. So that's pretty common as well. GERD, reflux. I see a lot of reflux that I get from clients. Sometimes as you go through this process, you'll notice that you may have a food sensitivity or an intolerance, and that can build over time. So you could be someone, we'll just use eggs as an example. Let's say that you've always been able to eat eggs and now all of a sudden you're getting some digestive complaints. Well, what can happen is you can have and develop a sensitivity to a food. And we're going to talk about this. The more you eat that food, the more the gut lining gets irritated. And so it sparks up all of these digestive issues. So there's sensitivities, which is different than being allergic to something. you can have a sensitivity. Most people that have these issues, they're more of a sensitivity that can build over time or an intolerance, not necessarily being allergic to. So we'll talk a little bit about that and what are the most common ones as well. Common reasons why they occur. Number one, top off the list is stress. Okay, we're talking about a little bit why. Lack of sleep, that will affect digestion, imbalance. And let me go back to stress. I want you guys to make sure that you're looking at stress as not just like external like stress in life. If you get sick, that's stressful to your system. If I'll use myself as an example. I don't know why I just thought of this, but I am currently going through a process. I have high blood pressure like genes, right? Both sides. And so this last 6 months, I've had issues dealing with high blood pressure and trying to adapt to certain medications and kind of get this back into balance. That is stress to my system. So sometimes, and I remember even saying this to a doctor when I was in my 30s, I was like, I'm not stressed. And he was like, you don't think you are, but it's the stress that's affecting your system. That doesn't mean that you feel stressed and like locked down all the time. It can be another form of stress. So just kind of keep an open mind as to what that could possibly look like. Imbalance of training stimulus to recovery. So a lot of times you'll hear this word overtraining thrown out there, and really it's not about overtraining. It's about, does your recovery match your training? In most cases, not always just that you're overtraining. Chronic dieting. Dieting is stressful to the system. We talked about this a little bit when we were talking about the metabolism overall. The metabolism does not like dieting at all. So it wants very small amounts for short periods of time. When you are a chronic dieter, that causes a lot of stress on the system. The standard American diet of high saturated fats, high simple carbohydrates, tons of sodium, that is stress to the system. What can also create some issues with digestion is rushed eating and a lack of chewing. I am guilty of this one, and I also have to be very aware when I eat to slow down because I do everything like high speed, right? And so I'm trying to check things off. And so I have to check myself and go, are you sitting? Are you in a relaxed state? Because remember, we're talking about a metabolic system that is having to be discerning on where it's going to spend energy. So if you guys have ever heard the phrase rest and digest, your body has to be in that relaxed state in order to have enough energy to digest food. So keep that in mind. Fiber intake, too high or too low. Yes, you can have amounts too high. I have a client that she's really good about getting fiber. I actually have to pull her down because she will get digestive kickback in terms of bloating. And sometimes I'm like, you're eating like 50 grams of fiber a day. And it's probably, when we look at it, not super balanced in terms of insoluble versus soluble fiber, right? So we want to balance that out, which means that you're not going to get all of your fiber from just fruits and veggies. You're also not going to get just fiber from grains. You want a good balance of those in between. Water intake, so often this is too low. So good rule of thumb, if you missed it the other day, when we initially talked about this, is half your body weight in ounces. Half your body weight in ounces is a good place to start and kind of like play with that just a little bit. Perimenopause and menopause, can you guess why that would cause digestive issues? Does anybody want to take a guess on that? Nope. No guesses. Oh, let's see what we got. Hormones? Yes. Can you, Rebecca says hormones. Can you tell me specifically what hormones or a specific hormone? Christina says dryness, estrogen. Yes. So these are all good answers. Here's why, is that as you go into perimenopause, into menopause, we become more stress sensitive. Well, we just talked about how stress is the number one reason why this can occur, right? So we know that drop in estrogen, we become more stress sensitive. And also, we're going to talk about this in just a little bit, as we age, and this is not just women, this is men too, is as we age, we produce less bile, less digestive enzymes, and less stomach acid or HCl, right? So we're not producing the things to break down food, and we're more stress sensitive, and we tend to be more insulin resistant, which means that based on the amount of carbohydrates that we eat, the cells can become resistant to that message, which affects our blood sugar, which affects our cortisol. It's all connected, and then that goes down into the gut. So that would be why. A sedentary lifestyle, you're not moving, which means that actually moving, walking right after you eat, actually helps kind of get the muscles to start to contract so that you can digest. Nutrient deficiencies can cause this, and also infections. All right, healthy gut roadmap. Let's talk about that. So I'm going to break this down, and then I'm actually going to switch to some other slides so we can break this down and give you kind of the breakdown of what to look for. So rest and digest at meal times. This is the number one thing that you should start with, right? Is to slow down and actually chew your food. If you pay attention, that food should be ground down to just almost nothing, right? Instead of like still having those big chunks of food that we like to swallow. Like, I want you guys to practice this tonight, if you haven't eaten dinner yet, is actually see if you can pay attention. Are you actually swallowing bigger chunks of food? My guess is probably yes, right? Are you talking? Are you doing stuff, right? Like, can you get yourself to calm down and actually focus on eating? Start there. Now, hydrate. We know that the body needs hydration in order to have healthy digestion. We talked about this last time. You don't want to drink that water. You don't want to drink a ton of it with your food. You can drink some, but we don't want to drink a ton in an effort to get it down. So don't be like, all right, half my body weight in ounces is 80 ounces. Well, let me drink, 30 with breakfast, or, 30 with lunch, just to get it in, because that water is going to help flush away whatever digestive enzymes that we do have. So we don't want to do that. Try to do it as needed while you're eating, but then try to do most of it away from your food. Lemon juice, apple cider vinegar. You've probably seen this. A lot of people will do this on social media where they're like, oh, take a couple tablespoons of apple cider vinegar in the morning. It does help break food down for sure. Lemon juice does the same thing. With apple cider vinegar, if I can't make myself do it very often, I just think it's gross. Just make sure that if you do it, you are diluting it, because it will burn your esophagus if you try to swallow it on its own. So you need to dilute it. And typically, I know people who do this in the morning. I also know people who do it before every meal, which I'm like, I don't know how you would do that. But they also digest their food pretty well. I do lemon juice in the morning. So when I put my Stanley together and I hydrate in the morning, I put a little bit of lemon juice in there. You can either do it with like a lemon, or if you're super lazy like me, I get the bottled, I think it's called Santa Maria. It's just lemon juice, and I just pour some of that in my water to help kind of get things going in the morning. Fiber, 25 to 45 grams daily. This, you just kind of got to test it, right? And see like, okay, where is my sweet spot? Some people are going to do fine with 25 grams. Other people are going to do okay with 45. The thing with fiber is that you do want the sweet spot. More is not necessarily better. I actually experienced this. This is one that I tested a little bit ago, is oatmeal. I was making things with oatmeal, and even raw is harder to digest. Even with it cooked, my body just has a really hard time digesting it. Right. And so then I actually started tracking for a few days, and I'm like, oh, my fiber was actually a little higher than I thought it was. And I was getting some bloating. So keep in mind, fiber and protein are harder to digest, which gives you an uptick in your metabolism. But if your body just can't digest it, and because you're not making bile, you're not making the digestive enzymes, right? You don't have the things to break it down. More is not going to be better. More is going to mean you're bloated and probably backed up. So we want that sweet spot and a good blend. In terms of fiber, the challenge that you're going to see that most people will notice is that when you're looking at fiber sources, especially like fruits and vegetables and even oatmeal, right? It's like 2 grams, 3 grams. You're like, how am I supposed to get to 25? Here's how I do it. Raspberries, super high in fiber. Avocados, high in fiber. Pears, high in fiber. What's the other one that I do? There are certain tortillas that you can get. So like I do Mission gluten-free tortillas. Do I love them? They're okay, but they have anywhere from 6 to 7 grams of fiber. Boom. You couple that with half of an avocado, and I'm close, right? You throw in a little bit of popcorn in there, and you're getting close. I love raspberries, right? So it doesn't have to just be vegetables. Just keep that in mind. You want to kind of get a good blend and then find your sweet spot. Stress management. I think we just need to go into a stress management call so you guys have some ideas on how to do that. I think that when it comes to stress management, a couple things to keep in mind. You don't control the outside world. You only control how you react to it. And here's what I can tell you about that. And I think a lot of people are feeling this now, is that especially as women, we feel like if something horrible is happening, if we are not feeling badly all the time about it, then there must be something wrong with us. And here's what I would invite you to consider. Feeling bad about something has no effect. The feeling of feeling bad doesn't change anything. And so what I invite you to do is to take stock. And it doesn't mean you ignore what's happening in the outside world, but you take stock and you have your feelings. I'm not saying shove your feelings down. Feel your feelings, but don't get stuck there, because that feeling is not useful if you get stuck there. You are much more useful when you operate from a place of power. So see if you can find that place. Hopefully that's helpful. Adequate sleep. Basically, that's how you recharge. Everything gets recharged with enough sleep. So we want to make sure that we're getting enough sleep. Movement. A really good way to aid in digestion is just take a 10-minute walk after you eat. Not a brisk walk, not a like, gotta get a, we're not doing a cardio walk. We're just leisurely walking to kind of aid in getting your food digested. Digestive enzymes, will go into this as well. HCl with meals, we'll talk about that, and we'll go to that. Okay, before I pull up this other slide, we're going to talk about the 5 R's, and it's kind of a process that you can take yourself through. Do you have any questions so far? Nope.
I have a question. Sorry, I couldn't get to my chat.
That's okay.
The walking, if instead of a walk, if like you ride a stationary bike, does that have the same effect?
Yeah, I mean, you're still moving. So one would think that it would, because you are still moving. So if you're sitting on that bike, your legs are moving. So you're getting blood flow through your entire body and your legs are moving. So I would think that it would help.
Okay.
The goal is not to do it from a cardio standpoint, though. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like
right.
it should be, because remember, rest and digest. So we are not trying to create stress in the system. We're just trying to create gentle movement.
Right. Okay.
So I think if you did it from that standpoint, it could be beneficial. I think that's a good question too.
All right. Thanks.
Anybody else? We're good? Okay. All right. Let me.
There's a question in the chat, Jen.
Thank you. I missed that. Is there a way to test for food sensitivities? This is such a good question. There is. Now, the second follow-up question to that is how accurate are they? And the answer to that is not very. So we're going to talk about how you can trial and error this, because there are a lot of food test options out there that will tell you like, oh, just take this test and you'll find out what sensitivities you have. And they're not super accurate, guys. I don't ever recommend them. I would rather see you do an elimination diet of some sort and figure out that way, because it is much more accurate. And when you do it right, it is very clear what you can tolerate and what you don't. We'll talk about what the best way to do that here in just a sec too. So let me pull this up. Good question. Oh, I just pulled up the wrong one again. Let's try that again, Jen. That's it. Hold on. Let me see what you guys are looking at. Do you guys see? Hold on. Should say 5 R's to rock your gut health. Do you guys see that?
Yep.
Perfect. Okay. So, Gut Health 101. So this is kind of a repeat. This one will say that 80% of your immune system lives in your gut. Like I said, the last one said 70%. Just know that a lot of it it lives in your gut. So signs of dysfunction, again, digestive issues like constipation, bloating, diarrhea, acid reflux, gas. It also can come in the way of skin conditions like eczema, psoriasis. It can also show up in conditions like Hashimoto's or other autoimmune conditions, rheumatoid arthritis, type 1 diabetes. It can also have an effect on depression, definitely anxiety. It can have an effect on unexplained weight gain or weight loss. It absolutely can have an effect on fatigue, show up as fatigue. I know that for me. I'm almost completely gluten-free. I don't do it very often. And for this reason, is that even if I don't get bloated or uncomfortable, depending upon what I eat, I never know until I eat it, I'm just getting really tired. I'm just like, ugh, I can't think. I'm super brain foggy. It can also show up as sugar cravings. So those are things that it can crop up as. What I want you to look at is this where it says the 5 R's of gut healing. So we want to, number 1, remove irritants to the gut. So if you're eating things, if you're ingesting things or doing things that are causing either an imbalance in the gut or an irritation in the lining of the gut, we want to remove those as much as possible. Then we want to replace the things like digestive enzymes, acid, bile. We're going to talk about those too. We want to replace things that your body maybe not be producing enough that are making it more difficult for you to digest. Reinoculate has to do with the bacteria. We're going to talk about that. Repair has to do with the gut lining. Just so you guys know, I know the phrase leaky gut gets thrown out there a lot. There is no actual leaky gut. But that being said, the lining of your intestines can definitely get torn and worn down and have little tears in it. And so we want that lining to be super healthy, right? And there are things that you can do to do that. And then in terms of rebalance, that has to do with some lifestyle options. So let's talk about remove. We're going to go through these. The first we talked about in terms of food sensitivities and intolerances. So anytime you take something in that causes irritation, again, that lining in the gut gets irritated, it causes inflammation, and that can cause some GI symptoms. So there are different versions of elimination diets, and you can go with, let's just stick to the big boys, and then there's everything that goes all the way to the more extreme autoimmune paleo protocol. If you want to just for sure figure this thing out, that would be the way to go. But it does mean that you're going to be removing a ton of foods out of your diet. You can look up AIP and it can show you exactly what you're going to be removing. You can find all kinds of recipes. I think I might even have one. I'm going to try and figure out how to create like a resource thing for you guys. You guys can just get these. Or if you want to just go, let me knock off the big offenders first and see what happens. So the big offenders are going to be gluten, dairy, sugar, and soy. Those are kind of, and I would throw in eggs, would probably be right after that. Those are going to be your biggest offenders. Now, as you go through this process, you may find, and this happens quite frequently with clients that I've worked with, is that they'll say, oh, it's so interesting. I can have cottage cheese, but I can't have yogurt, or the other way around. You'll find that maybe there are certain dairy products that you tolerate better than others. And it's just because of what's inside of it and how it's processed that will have an effect how your gut responds to it. So not uncommon at all. So we want to remove those things. We want to remove, I'm going to go down to the inflammatory foods, things like alcohol, coffee, sugar again, processed foods, food additives, also sugar alcohols. Just so you guys know, I think we briefly talked about this maybe, is that we kind of went through with our food manufacturing, we've gone through these processes, right? So for a long time it was like high fat foods, right? So then it became this like, oh, fat is bad. So then it went to low fat. So everything came out was low fat. Well, or if you take away fat, you have to change food to make it still palatable. So then they added more sugar. So now we have low fat, high sugar foods. And then manufacturers like, oh, well, too much sugar is bad, so we got to cut the sugar down. So then you see this big wave of sugar additives or sugar substitutes, right? And so sugar alcohols eventually came along. Well, what they are realizing is that for most people, sugar alcohols are horrible for the gut. The gut doesn't know how to process them. And so now it's like, okay, like, what do we do? Now, what I'm seeing, I discovered just because I'm dealing with high blood pressure, is that manufacturers are adding more sodium. If you take a look at your foods, there's more sodium in it. So they have to add things to make them more palatable. So you want to take a look at what you're eating and go, okay, what are the things that are going to irritate this lining? And we want to make sure that it's, as least processed as possible. Doesn't mean that it's going to be perfect, because these are going to irritate the gut lining. Hold on, I see a couple questions real quick. Oh, no problem, Christina. Christina had to go. Appreciate you being here. Anna, will it make you more sensitive to dairy in general if you eat dairy that you can tolerate? By eating dairy that you can tolerate, if you can truly tolerate it, it shouldn't irritate the gut. So it wouldn't have an effect or make you would only become more sensitive to the things that are irritating. Does that make sense, Anna?
Yeah. Yeah, I just was gonna maybe try yogurt, and I didn't want to like go crazy and eat a lot of it if it was gonna start to make everything else worse.
So that's a great question. So here is, and it's actually down here that it talks about elimination diets. I don't know if you guys see this at the bottom. Elimination diets, while helpful, are meant to be temporary, anywhere from 1 to 3 months. And after that, you can reintroduce foods one by one, every 2 to 3 days to see if you have any reactions. I typically tell people a couple months. So give it a good 6 weeks where you just eliminate, like decide what you're going to eliminate, figure it out, and then do that. Now, when you go to add foods back in, you have to be careful because you can only add one at a time. And then when you add it, you want to give it another 2 to 3 days to see how you're responding. So typically, if you're like, okay, and the way that I would add them back in is based on the food that's hardest for you to remove. So for a lot of my clients, that's dairy. They're like, could I please just give me dairy? And I'll say, okay, fine, but I want you to separate the dairy into like yogurt and then another one for cottage cheese. So at least you're getting 2 different versions of dairy because they are different. You're going to introduce one, and most people have one that they prefer. So they introduce that one, and then you wait 2 to 3 days and see if you have a reaction. If you have no reaction, you just move on to the next one. And then you just keep doing that as you reintroduce foods. And what you will find is that there's definitely going to be something that crops up and you're like, oh, I had no idea that I had an issue with gluten. Now, same thing, I have a sensitivity to gluten. I'm not allergic to it as far as I know. I definitely have a sensitivity to it. If I do it in small amounts, depending upon where it comes from, I can do okay with it. It does make me a little tired. So it doesn't mean you can never have it, but it means eliminate it long enough so that you can repair the gut and then eat it sparingly so that you're not causing further issues. Other things that can cause some of this, again, chronic infection. So if you have a yeast overgrowth with candida, SIBO, small intestinal bacteria overgrowth, any parasitic infections can disrupt the balance of the gut. I will say that these are all things that have to be tested. So this is not something like you can research it and kind of look at symptoms, but when it comes to the gut, it is really a little more challenging to do it just based on symptoms. And there are tests that they're stool tests that can help identify what's going on. And you can do that. I actually have a client who just did a breath test as well. Medications can damage, again, that gut lining. So keep that in mind when you're looking at that. That could be an issue. And then again, stress. So those are the gut irritants, and we want to find ways to eliminate or minimize them. Then we want to replace the things that actually aid in digestive function. We talked about these. These are things that can be deficient, and they definitely, your body produces less of them as we age. So first one is digestive enzymes. Digestive enzymes are what help you break down food properly, right? So if you are not breaking your food down properly, you're going to have some nutrient deficiencies and also probably experience some gut disruption symptoms, right? So it leads to gas, bloating, undigested food in your stool. These are all signs that you could benefit from an enzyme support. And lists a couple here. I have taken Pure Encapsulations as a good brand. So you're just looking for something. When it comes to supplements, I always tell people, like, don't get the cheapest one, but you also don't need the $100 version. Like, find kind of a middle ground that comes that's reputable, that has good reviews, and kind of test it out. When it comes to digestive enzymes, I also recommend switching brands every once in a while, because they will have different ratios of your digestive enzymes. And so sometimes that's helpful too. HCl, if you guys Google HCl test, it will walk you through how to do this. The big takeaway from this one that I want you to understand is that a lot of times people think that their acid reflux is coming from too much acid. And it's actually, in many cases, because their stomach isn't producing enough acid. And if you look up the HCl test, it actually walks you through how to do this. You just order a supplement called HCl. It walks you through how to find the point of where you need the support. And what's great about this is that what we have found is, over time, if you do this and you're really diligent about it, over time, you can take less and less of this. I've done HCl a couple times, and usually I can get off of it pretty quickly. Everybody's different. Bile support. Bile actually helps your body digest fats. This one's a big one for me. So bile, if your body doesn't produce enough of this, you may notice that when you eat fattier foods, even like like avocados or anything with olive oil or beef, things like that, that are a little bit fattier, that you just don't digest them as well. And I am definitely that person. So you can look at different bile support options as well. It gives you some foods that you can try, and then there are also supplements that you can get that help with that. Oh, here we go. Anna, if anyone wants the recipe for a natural reflux gourmet, she's got one. So there you go. If you guys want it, make sure you put it in the chat. Is that the easiest thing for you, Anna?
Yeah, I guess I'm not ready with it today, so I can bring it another time.
If you guys want to reach out to Anna or comment, or if when you have it ready, Anna, you want to put it together, then I can send it out when I send everything else out. I'm happy to do that.
Yeah, I can do that.
Because I'm sure people are like, hey, like, what is that? Let me take a look at that. Okay, so then the third step is going to be to reinoculate. This is where it gets confusing, because everybody's heard of like good bacteria versus bad bacteria. It doesn't quite work like that. It's more of an imbalance, right? Like, we want a good balance of the right bacteria. And when it gets out of balance, it causes problems, right? So we want to repopulate your gut with friendly or a good balance of bacteria. There's probiotics and there's prebiotics. The easiest way to understand them is that the probiotics contain the cultures that are beneficial to the microbiome in your gut. So there's food like yogurt, sauerkraut, kimchi, kefir, miso, kombucha. Those are all things that would help with probiotics, or you can take a probiotic. Disclaimer is that not everybody needs a probiotic. No, not everybody needs to be taking a probiotic, because remember, the probiotics, if you already have them in your gut, you can cause an overgrowth. So now we're imbalanced. So I always recommend testing, right? Making sure that you're adding some of these foods in first, doing some of the other steps first, and then you can take a look at probiotics. Prebiotics are basically the food to help those probiotics thrive. they're bacteria, they need food, right? So prebiotic foods include the things you see there, the chicory root, dandelion greens, Jerusalem artichokes, bananas, yum, asparagus, flaxseed, oats, leeks, onions, garlic, and apples. So those are going to be foods. You can also get supplements that have prebiotics in them. Repair. These are things that help repair that intestinal lining. Okay, so collagen-rich foods. You can do bone broth, which is good for the gut. Honestly, my two favorite, these are like clockwork. My two favorite things to help with gut lining is L-glutamine, which if you look, if you're taking any kind of protein powder supplement, if you look, more than likely there is some L-glutamine in there. Most dosing per day is going to be around the 5 gram per day mark. L-glutamine is a repair, right? It's a repair amino acid. So it's going to help repair the gut lining. It's also going to help repair tissue after a workout. So you're going to be able to recover a lot quicker. So again, right around that 5 gram mark, love L-glutamine. Again, most of the time it might be in your protein powder supplement. Also aloe vera juice. I take this every night. I also, I actually found it when we were in Italy. When we traveled to Italy last year, I found little bottles of aloe vera juice. I'm like, and I like stocked them in the house that we were staying at. And I stayed consistent with my bowel movements every day. Aloe vera juice is really great at helping to repair the lining of the gut, is also really good for general digestion. So if you feel like you're getting a little bit of constipation, you can take anywhere from 2 to 4 ounces to start. You can take up to 8, but I would certainly not take that much initially. I would start with like 2, maybe 4 ounces, kind of see if you can get things going, but you can increase from there. And I take this every night before I go to bed. I mix it with a little bit of tart cherry juice, which is good for recovery and sleep. And I take that with all of my nighttime supplements. So it's pretty easy. Let's see. Is it a good idea to do probiotics after a course of antibiotics? Yes, because antibiotics is going to fall underneath the medications that will kill off the bacteria that we want. And so a round of probiotics is a good idea. Good question. Rebalance. This is going to have to do with your lifestyle, right? Because if you go through this entire process and your lifestyle is still a train wreck and you're creating more of an issue, then you're starting all over again, right? So number one, make exercise a consistent habit, right? So research has shown that it actually helps with your microbiome diversity. We don't want just a specific kind, we want a diversity of microbiome. Practice good sleep hygiene. Guys, this is a game changer. And you're talking, this is someone who I love living. I love going 100 miles per hour and everything that I do. I love that feeling. I am definitely not an adrenaline junkie, but I'm definitely a high energy junkie, which in the past got me in trouble because I did all of the caffeine supplements and all of that stuff to keep me wired, right? So that is kind of what I have to watch for because I just love going, right? So sleep is like, I don't want to sleep. That's boring. It is a game changer. Your body needs that recovery. And it's definitely something that I had to change my mindset around as I was going through perimenopause. And now I love our nighttime routine. And the trick to doing it is making it something that you enjoy. If it's a habit that you have to do, you're like, I'd rather just do this other thing, then you're going to have a hard time sticking with it. But for me, we have really comfortable sheets. We have a bed that I love. I love crawling into bed after getting ready and checking out my new favorite book. And then pretty soon here comes my partner. And then pretty soon here comes the cat. And all of us just sit there and we're all together and we talk lightly, or usually my partner and I, we kind of like, we're touchers, right? So one of us will stroke the other and it's just very calming. And I've learned to really love that calming state. And it has made a big difference in my sleep and recovery. Keep stress in check. Here are things to keep in mind with stress also that we talked about, kind of understanding external stress, but things that you can do to manage it internally is not always that you need to meditate for 30 minutes. If you do that, fantastic. but it doesn't always require that. It can be just like we do in class, it could be the 2 to 3 minutes of breath work. It could be going for your leisure walk. It could be spending time. I used to do this when I was really stressed and living on the road and having to go to different clubs. And it was just like walking outside and like getting in my car and like listening to either really good music or something funny, right? Like it just calms some of that stress down. It doesn't have to be like this whole like spa day. It doesn't have to be a big deal. It just means that you have your little things that help manage stress. Also, just FYI, orgasms, really good. They calm your body just like that. Also very helpful for sleep. And then eat a healthy diet, right? Because you want to be able to manage this over time. That doesn't mean that it's perfect. But if you're throwing junk into the system, it's all getting clogged up in your gut anyway. Ta-da, we're done. All right. Questions. Now, let me just, again, before questions start popping up, this is the foundation. This is where you start. You look at all of these and go, am I chewing my food? Am I hydrating properly? Am I getting some movement in? Am I managing sleep? Do I have stress practices, right? That's where you start. There's no need to skip ahead if you're not doing those things first. Like I have a client, and it's funny, her biggest thing, she came from corporate Amazon, right? All of those things, right? So she's used to like da 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 da. And her biggest issue that she's still trying to work through is sugar cravings. And so I've given her tools, but even, we're probably 8 weeks in. Even just the other day, she's like, okay, I'm trying those things, but from your clients, like, what do they say helps with these sugar cravings? And I'm like, okay, well, let me ask you this. Are you drinking enough water? Are you getting enough protein? Are you getting enough fiber? Are you managing sleep? And I'm like, are you doing these basics? And she's like, no. I'm like, right. So let's get those first before we look for some magic answer. Start there. And then we go, okay, let me go through the 5 R's. Let me see if that works. And then I will also say this. If you've done those things, ongoing digestive issues is not normal. Don't disregard them. Look for the reason why. It could be anything. It could be SIBO. It could be numerous things. And in fact, we had one of our members reach out after we talked a little bit about this last time. There are various serious issues that are related to digestion, such as ovarian cancer, right? So not to scare you, it doesn't mean everybody needs to rush out or be worried about it just because you have bloating. It means go through the process to eliminate those things and make sure that you're following up and not just disregarding. I think that, again, as women, I know that I was guilty of this, is that you get used to living at a certain state of stress and that becomes your new normal. And so just being bloated or not going to the bathroom every day becomes your new normal, and you don't realize that that's not a healthy state to be in. I have a client that I just got off the call with, and she said, now she's getting to where she sleeps more and she hits that 8 hours of sleep. She's like, it's better than an orgasm. I never knew. And I'm like, yeah, like you just feel like elated because you got enough sleep and you feel good. So I think you just have to remember that if you are living in a state of like just constantly trying to check things off of your list and get things done, that is stress, and you are just accustomed to living that way. That doesn't mean that it's healthy or normal. So, gonna go through the questions. Does lemon water work the same before and after breakfast? Yes. You can do it whenever. So like, honestly, I could put more lemon in my water throughout the day. I just don't. But you can do it. You could keep it in your water. Does the same thing. It's good at helping digestion. It helps break food down. It's a good question.